Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in again live today. It is Monday, December 30th. It is noon, and you are currently watching the Skill Building Monday Drawing Group. I'm your host, Jason Leeser. And if this is working for you, please let us know in the comments and in the chats, and please tag a friend who loves tattoos. Welcome to Guy Aitchison's Reinventing the Tattoo Community, where tattooers, apprentices, collectors, and the curious are encouraged to join in these live streams, real world events, to share, inspire, and ultimately create better art and tattoos together. We beam out nearly every day, and with your help, have evolved into a quality network of amazing live and on demand tattoo and art shows that have all been receiving rave reviews. You can find Reinventing the Tattoo at www.reinventingthetattoo.com. Uh, right there. Thank you. Um, where you can try it out for free. It's no obligation. You don't have to subscribe right away. Uh, we do offer three options for you to try it out. You can take a sample webinar from the Reinventing the Tattoo Canon, or you can get some free advice from Guy Aitchison about your unique goals. Or you can take a comprehensive tattoo history course from Jay Brown. Um, all of which are excellent options. Highly recommend you take advantage of all of them. That way, you get a better idea of what it's like to be a part of the Reinventing the Tattoo community. While you're at reinventingthetattoo.com, you can also find a full event schedule with full weekly and special event live stream details. For example, if you wanted to jump into today's show, you could go right there and you could find all of the links that you would need to join today's show. You can also find access to the Reinventing 24/7 channel, which has 13 different episodes playing at any given time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and is compatible with all web-enabled devices. Um, you can also find professional development courses from over 20 world-class tattooers, and we have an app in the App Store and the Google Play Store, as well as a Reinventing the Tattoo YouTube channel, a Reinventing the Tattoo Roku channel, which has 12 to 15 different episodes going at any given time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can also find us in all of the major podcast directories, such as Apple and Spotify, where you can do what most people do and just do a search for Reinventing the Tattoo and you'll find it all, except for the book, which is still currently out of print. If this is working for you, please let us know in the comments and in the chat, and please tag a friend who loves tattoos. We have a number of weekly staple shows we always encourage people to tune into. Starting off on Mondays at 9 a.m., we have Drawing for Tattooers with James Wisdom, where we get to go through and discuss basic drawing techniques and strategies. Helps us get back to our roots of being a fine artist in this wonderful tattoo age that we are in. Following that, on Mondays at noon, we have this show, which is the Skill Building Monday Drawing Group, hosted by me, where we go through and we try to work on different skills and try to help refine some of those skills, whether it's Procreate, tips, tricks, and hacks, or whether it's, working on an analog painting that can really help sometimes, or whether it's just discussing basic concepts. All of that and a lot more, it's all discussed on this show. Capping off Mondays at 9 p.m., we have a subscribers exclusive drawing group with Sandy McAndrew, which is available only for people that have a Reinventing the Tattoo subscription or a Monday night drawing exercise subscription. You do have to pay for that, but I can tell you from firsthand experience, it's absolutely incredible. Following that, on Wednesdays, we have the Tattoo Now show with Gabe Ripley, where we get to do a deeper dive into the business side of tattooing, whether it's marketing and advertising strategies or client retention or client communication or booking process. All of that and a lot more, anything to do with the business side of tattooing, all discussed Wednesdays at noon. Would like to go through our sponsors and some people that make these shows happen. Starting off with worldtattooevents.com, the largest, most comprehensive resource for tattoo events worldwide. They are constantly keeping everything updated. As we know, some conventions and events are getting rescheduled. Uh, we are living in a post-pandemic era, so a lot of things are still up in the air. If you're looking for the latest, most greatest, most up-to-date tattoo event or convention information coming to a city or town near you, or maybe it's one you plan on visiting. It's how I tend to schedule all of my vacations. Take a look at worldtattooevents.com. Would also like to thank TattooNow.com, technology for tattooers, the leading edge in professional development, management, and digital tools for tattooers of all levels. They are 100% competitive with any type of CRM, mailing list, or scheduling software out there. So if you are looking for the digital tools to help you streamline your booking process or to really help you reach a larger client base, take a look at tattoonow.com. They have been an industry leader in doing just that for over 20 years. Would also like to thank Guy Aitchison over at guyaitchison.com. He is the founder and inspiration behind Reinventing the Tattoo. You can go to guyaitchison.com where you can pick up a copy of his Biomech Encyclopedia, some of his tutorial DVDs. You may still have a few custom coil machines for sale, as well as countless fine art prints and the occasional oil painting, all for sale at guyaitchison.com. Would also like to say a quick thank you and shout out to Amy Nichols over at the Apprenticeship Diaries. It is a podcast and it is absolutely jam packed for information for people that are looking to become a tattoo apprentice or already are a tattoo apprentice and are looking for more information. So go take a look at that. That is the Apprenticeship Diaries podcast with Amy Nichols. We always ask that if you like today's show, please go through, post a positive review on the channel, help us get the word out. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button at the bottom of the page. This way you don't miss any future or upcoming episodes. If you would like to host a Reinventing the Tattoo event, become a sponsor of our community, or if you are looking for a fine art or a tattoo critique, you can always email management at reinventingthetattoo.com. That kind of wraps up our intro for today. I am looking a little rough around the edges. It is the holiday season. I haven't trimmed my beard lately, and I got in a fight with my cat. Apparently, cats like wrapping paper and the crinkling and crunching sound, and I did not know that. So my cat decided to attack me. Yay, go holidays, right? That being said, I am working on a concept for a spine tattoo today. Which I will be pulling up in just a second. I did want to make sure that I sent out the link to a very special someone, James Wisdom, who I was in their... Got it. There we go. I know he said he's got a rather large tattoo he will be doing today, but I wanted to make sure he got the link. He did do a live stream earlier today, so I wanted to make sure that he got today's link for this show. Would also like to say a very special thank you and shout out to tattoos.social. This is the #1 tattoo community for people involved in the tattoo industry. It is a great place to go through to connect and network with other tattoo artists, ask questions, get information, and it's all of the fun of social media without all of the crap attached to it. It's strictly based on tattoos and tattooing, and it is a great place to go through and get more tattoo information. For example, the Fireside Network is on there, which is absolutely incredible. Reinventing the Tattoo is on there, which is also awesome, and a whole lot more. Go take a look. Tattoos.social. They have an app. They have everything. It's absolutely awesome. Can't recommend it enough. With that being said, I'm going to switch over to my tablet, and I will throw myself up here in the corner. And let's start sketching. So I already have a couple of concepts set up. And I always like to take some notes whenever I'm, coming up with a concept for someone. I really like to go through and create kind of a narrative, if at all possible. If any of you caught the show with James Wisdom earlier this morning, you'll hear us talking a little bit about that. So you can always go through and check that out later. This client wants pretty much a spinal tattoo, and I'm just going to go through. Now, when I think of a spine tattoo, I'm thinking maybe an inch or two on each side of the actual center of the back. Maybe nothing crazy, and I hope hopefully this is coming through all right. I've just got that kind of like outlined in green a little bit. Um, and I'll just keep that toned down a little bit, even though it's pretty faint as it is, so maybe I'll just keep it there. But I always like to take some notes. So I've got some like concepts over here, a bat, a spider webs, a flower with Victorian scroll designs, maybe like an old Gothic grotesque or gargoyle, maybe like some dark bio or some teeth or something like, those spiky like teeth things that you see. Um, but, I'm just going to start sketching. I've got like, and I know it's kind of hard to see, but I have like a little reference of a bat that I found that would make for a really good like upper middle back kind of concept. So I'm gonna go through and just kind of like do some quick little doodles and sketches, keeping it super rough. Not really worrying about anything, any accuracy or anything like that. Just kind of playing around with some things, trying to get some positioning right and some perspectives and this is probably going to end up being too big. I can already tell, but that's okay. I'd bring this down. Good. So I'm just kind of like mocking some things up. Maybe go a little smaller. I do also have to remember that, I can't make it too small because then you won't be able to see what the face is. Or where that's coming from. So I'm trying to keep everything in perspective as far as when I go to execute this tattoo, how big will everything be? And if I've got like two tiny little beady eyes, right, I'm not going to be able to get any like kind of fangs in there because they're probably going to be too small. But once again, that's also why I'm just kind of like mocking things up. Maybe this will be the nose. I always like to do some quick mock-ups and sketches just to rough out some ideas. Maybe I want to have the jaw open a little bit more. Bring that down a little bit. Can tell based on the anatomy that the tail's going to kind of come down. And then we would have, a couple of like, rough leg areas here and here. We would have the thumb coming down in this direction, kind of branching off. Bat wings are pretty crazy to me because it's actually their hands. So if we think of like all of these like spiny things in the wings, those are actually a bat's fingers. And then the webbing on the inside of the wings, that's kind of like the webbing in between our fingers. Bat anatomy to me is just like awesome. Um, I'm just so fascinated with them. Like, how do they not get a head rush by hanging upside down when they sleep? I just don't. It's just fascinating. Um, and I know it sounds a little silly, but they've just always been something that a creature that's fascinated me. So I can tell just by looking at this that the body needs to be a little bit bigger. Right now I'm just kind of blocking some things in. I'm not even worrying about anything else at this point. Just kind of like scribbling or noodling a little bit. Just trying to get like a rough idea or a rough approximation of what could be. Right, so I've got 1, 2, and then the third is actually that part. I've got 1, 1, 2. Okay, so I've got a little bit too many. I've got too many digits here because then that's 1, 2, 3, then that and that. Okay, so I am right. Okay, cool. Um, once again, I'm not worried about whether or not this looks good or accurate or anything like that because I'm going to be going through and doing a lot of like warping. Maybe I'm going to change this around a little bit. And since it's all, I'm working on basically a mirrored canvas, so not like super concerned about a whole lot. Just kind of roughing it in, just trying to get a better idea of, what could I do conceptually. Obviously, I'd go through if this was a final version and I would change a lot of things. I'd probably change a lot of proportions, but just conceptually, just trying to see what I think might look good. I'm not really super worried about this. This is just kind of like me thumbnailing. So if I did maybe a bat in the upper portion of the back, I could probably go through, maybe bring some like spider webbing out. That could be nice and dark and creepy. Maybe split this one off down here. Um, Now, when drawing spider webs, always make it asymmetrical. I'm drawing this symmetrically just because I'm just conceptualizing right now, but always draw your spider webs asymmetrically, make them uneven because that's the way that they would occur in nature. They're not going to be perfectly symmetrical every time. You're going to have like little offshoots here and there. Um, it just makes it more intriguing and more interesting to look at. Now, this is probably going to be a bit wider than what my client is thinking. If I shrink the whole thing down, I'd have to be careful about the scale of the bat and the eyes, especially the teeth. But, that's something I can definitely explore as the concept develops a little bit more. Maybe from here I could add in maybe some more webbing. Kind of in the background up there. Maybe add a couple other things. Like a couple of little notches here and there. Maybe a little strand or two coming down. And then you can always split it off so that you can do some more. You can bring one strand down and have that split so it's constantly splitting. As long as you're getting like your cross structures right, you can make it look cool. Maybe bring like another little dangly thing down. So we could have, like webbing going all the way up and all the way down. Some people draw their cross braces for the webs with an arc going up. Some people draw them with an arc going down. All kind of depends on what kind of a feeling you're trying to get in it. Um, if you wanted to draw a more realistic web, we'll just duplicate this and then so if you wanted to draw something maybe a little bit more realistic, probably have like, something coming down like that. I always like to try to draw with the anatomy. So, for example, I've got these nice curves. I've got a nice curve here where the scapula is. That's your shoulder bone. Um, I've got a pretty definitive taper on the torso coming down. So I'm really trying to go with that and accent that. Um, and I'm also at the same time trying to stay away from the typical, like, well, we'll do a bat tramp stamp and, whatever. Nah, forget that. The tramp stamp died at the end of the 90s. And yeah, so I try to stay away from that and avoid that if at all possible. Instead, what I like to do is try to focus on going with almost like a diamond shape, if at all possible, because I just think that complements the human body way more than something down here. So, but if you're sticking with the spinal column, that's where things get a little bit more tricky. Because in order to create a narrative with a very small linear area, you really have to kind of like accent and work on just a very small bit of area that tapers. And that is not easy. So once again, if I was drawing the bat, we'll just make this a little bit lighter. I could very easily just bring this down all the way straight down in the middle. This could also really work well for using it almost like a guideline. So for when you're lining it up on your client, I always like to have something in the middle just to help me line things up a little bit easier. But this is what I was talking about before. If you were trying to draw it maybe a little bit more realistically, you would actually go with gravity when drawing your cross braces for the webbing. So a lot of it would end up curving down. Now, granted, everyone's got their own way of doing things. Believe it or not, as simple as spider webs are, I really struggled one of the first times that I was asked to do like decent spider webs. So it's something I've really put some time into trying to learn. Um, Sometimes the most simple things out there are the hardest to draw. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Amy. Really appreciate that. Amy Ward just said, looking sweet, even as a sketch. Thank you, Amy. Always appreciated. Let's see. Maybe you'll do like some like this. If you're going to go with the flow of gravity, I always like to make some droop a little bit more. And I'll add, once again, some of those little like little like loops in there. This is where you can really play with like those little dangly webs coming down. Really kind of allows you to utilize the concept of gravity a little bit easier when drawing your webs. And we can continue this all the way down if we wanted to. So it's, multiple ways that you can draw spider webs. Some people just do like straight lines, and that can work well, but then it can almost look too geometric. So I try to stay away from those. Once again, if I was drawing this and it wasn't a concept, I would actually go through and draw everything asymmetrically. It's a lot more tedious to draw it that way, but it works a lot better, and it gives it that real authentic kind of feeling. And it stays away from like that 1980s, like, biker spider web, which I'm not a big fan of, believe it or not. I've tattooed spider web designs plenty of times in different spots on the human body. And yeah, that like old school spider web from like the flash sheets from like the 1970s and 80s, it's just not something I'm into doing. I mean, I'll do it, don't get me wrong, I'll tattoo it, but It's like let me draw something up that's a little bit cooler and a little bit nicer that's going to have a little bit more of my own style to it, you know? So we can do something like that. That could be cool. Now, another concept that I had was doing something almost like engravers, old engravers scrolling designs, or engravers filigree designs. It's actually a Rococo pattern. Rococo was an artistic time period, which was fantastic. I get a lot of inspiration from that. Once again, we could actually keep the bat if we wanted to keep the bat. And I apologize if anyone out there is hearing a cat crying in the background. That is one of my cats that is a really severe attention whore, and who absolutely has to be the center of attention at all times. Elkie, I love you, but you gotta chill out. Like, seriously. So the other concept was the Rococo ornamentation, or Baroque or Victorian, which it's often more commonly referred to as Victorian ornaments or Victorian scroll designs. If I were going to do something like that, we'll switch over colors. These can be a little bit more tricky for some people, because it's all based on an interconnecting spiral pattern. So we could easily go through and, just kind of draw some spirals here. And I'll show you there is a right and a wrong way to draw this stuff. I spent the better part of a year, believe it or not, taking classes in engravers, filigree, and scroll work, um, just trying to learn the design aspect behind it a little bit better, so that if I was ever asked to draw something like it, not only could I draw a really awesome design, but I know it would be correct and it would have the exact look I'm trying to go for. Um, we could even add in almost like a banner or a scrolling kind of end cap below the bat. That could work well. Um, a lot of these designs and motifs are based off of what's known as the acanthus leaf, which you can see a lot in Greek and Roman architecture. Look at the tops of all of Greek and Roman columns, and you'll see acanthus leaf scrolling designs. It's actually one of the ways that you can tell the time period that that specific column was created and sculpted. I believe there's two major classifications, the Doric and Ionic kind, if I remember my art history class correctly. Um, I was never a fan of art history. I always thought it was more memorization than actual like interpretation and analysis of art, which is something that I always preferred to be discussing, but that's apparently not part of the curriculum. For these scrolling designs, it's all about trying to find the right curve and the right kind of flow to it. A lot of them interconnect, and by interconnect, I mean you'll have some areas that are a lot bigger and more spaced out. Those will actually intersect and overlap with other areas that also curl around. This is You see this a little bit more in traditional American scroll designs from American hand engravers, whereas you see a lot more traditional Baroque and Rococo kind of designs that don't have a lot of interconnecting or interlocking elements. And then we could always bring like a little bit out there, but it's all based off of the acanthus leaf. So if you're ever looking for inspiration or ways and ideas on how to draw this kind of stuff, take a look at the acanthus leaf designs. That's exactly where a lot of people get their inspiration for this kind of motif. Once again, I'm just kind of blocking some things in. I'm not really worried about it looking good or being super accurate. I'm just kind of, you know, noodling and doodling and just sketching and just seeing what's going to look appropriate and good. And then this we could bring down here as like almost a longer kind of leaf element. We could always then, I always hate doing that though. I hate it when I see that. It's such a cop out in my opinion. When you do like a little heart shape at the bottom of it, especially like going down into like the belt line, I just think that's should have died in the late 90s, but that's just my opinion. It does complement the shape of the area. I just think it's so played out that I try to avoid it. Instead, let's see what we can do about maybe doing something like this. Maybe bringing this up and around a little bit more. And then back over. Not trying to keep it too pointed at the bottom though, just because I'm not trying to make it look like a tramp stamp of any kind. And this is actually a little bit big, so I would probably shrink this down a bit more. And then that'll give us a little bit more room. And we'll start to avoid that whole pitfall of the point going into the butt crack. You know what I mean? No one wants that. From here, we could take this, branch this off, and spiral this out a little bit. You know, maybe we'll bring a second curl or spiral down this way. We'll bring this one in here and just kind of do like a reverse spiral here. And then this we could bring out and we'll just do like an ornamental end cap well above the belt line. So if you're drawing acanthus leaf type shapes or scrolling elements or anything like that, I always start out with just a basic line first. And what I've started doing is I actually have a pen set up just for this, the studio pen, which I've customized. I will actually go through and let's make this a little bigger. Nope, too big. A little bit smaller. Maybe a little darker. You know what? Let's just do a different color altogether. Let's do like a dark green. So and you can set this up with a little bit more pressure stability, which can work really nicely. And I just want to make this a little bit more opaque. Maximum opacity, we'll do max, Apple Pencil. Where is rendering? Flow is max. It's an intense glaze. That should work. Okay, cool. Still a little too... That'll do. Nope. Alright, well, let's just go with this guy. This one's a lot better. There we go. I actually have this set up with a lot of streamline so that I can go through and really kind of make some of these nice smooth curls. From here, we could easily branch this off and we'll bring that out and we'll just do like a little bump. I love drawing this kind of stuff. to me, it's just a lot of fun. From here, we'll bring this over. And then we'll do maybe one that goes this way. I always like to start out with something like this that's nice and big, just to get some of these smooth curls in there. I just find it makes the whole process a lot easier. You know, if I'm doing this kind of a thing, I'll bring this down and around. Maybe this will have something branching off of it there. This will actually get a concave kind of look to it. And then same thing here, and then here, and then here. Almost make it look like it's a scroll, for lack of a better term. From here, now that I've got my concept shape, I don't have to stick with it necessarily. That's kind of what I like about using the Studio Pen for this, is you can really go through and build off of these elements to really create something nice. And if you use it with transparency on, you can see everything building up over time. We'll make that a little bit lighter, and oh, that's why. Duh. So let's create another one over top of this. Now it's looking the way I want it to. If you have it set up correctly, where was that previous one that I had? This guy. You can actually see it building up the layers, you know, as you're drawing it. So you can really see how everything builds up and off of this kind of design. If we wanted to do, let's say we do a little guy here. Okay, you can see how it's getting darker the way that I have this pen set up. The more times I go over it, it's getting darker, right? That's going to help me refine this design as I'm drawing it to help me get the right flow in there. You know, so if I do it once and I'm like, maybe I should do it a little bit lighter. Maybe I want to add another little piece. You can always hit that a couple of times. So it can help you build off of your initial design and really help you refine it as you go. Now, what a lot of people forget when drawing this kind of design, and what separates people that really know how to do it right from the people that know how to do it okay, is whenever you're drawing designs like this, you have to remember that there is a spine that goes down that leaf, right? That spine is what ultimately makes the difference when drawing these kinds of designs. And I'll show you exactly what I mean in just a second. So we've got, say, this element kind of roughed in already. So I'm going to make that a little bit lighter. That's going to be a little bit lighter. Now let's refine that a little bit, and we'll switch back over to our pencil. So if I was drawing this acanthus leaf design, I would have this center part spiraling in. And the spine, I always try to keep to the outside edge. Okay? What that means is that if I've got another little curl here where part of a leaf will spread out and spread and kind of curl up, that means I'm always leaving a little bit of this spiny gap so that nothing touches this outside line. And that is one of the hallmarks of people that really know how to draw these designs correctly and make them look the best from people that might not know that. And I'm not saying that there aren't people out there that, aren't very good at this. I'm just saying it's a hallmark of someone that really knows what they're doing when drawing these kinds of designs. You see a lot of these designs that originate, as I mentioned before, in Europe. But then you have other people such as English hand engravers that used to make all the engraved like guns and armor and stuff like that for royalty. And I actually have photos of it because it's so impressive. The last time I was in England, I went to the Tower of London, and they have an entire museum of old arms and armor. And it's absolutely fascinating just to look at how intricate those engraved designs are. Will you make those lines the same line weight in the end? Great, great question. Um, in the end, no, I will not. So if I were to go through and we'll just use this one. I'll switch over to black, create a new layer. So I would always take, this is going to be a little too thick for this intricate of a detail, but I would always keep the exterior line, that spine, a bit thicker on the outside to create that nice perimeter border. Unless, of course, there's an area that overlaps with it. All of the interior lines are going to be much thinner, and that's going to create that illusion that everything is kind of moving in a direction and overlapping. Anytime you have a thicker line, it's going to come forward in space, and anytime you have a much thinner line, it's going to recede in space. So it's going to move backwards. So we're going to keep these very nice and thin because this is just going to be an accent. But this inner line here that's going to create the border, this outer boundary in between our negative space and our inner lines, that's going to be a little bit thicker, just like the outer spine line. A lot of times I'll actually go through, as long as I have the size of the tattoo will allow it, I'll actually go through and do a very, very hair thin line right along the spinal area where I want everything to kind of match up to. And what that's going to do is remind me to keep that area open as I'm shading it and creating that kind of value in it so that way I kind of don't go over that spot. I just kind of leave it be. And that will create that spine kind of look for the acanthus leaf design. Anytime you have like a little accent line, it's going to be super thin. And you see this a lot, once again, with engraving scroll work. You'll actually see a lot of people, and this looks really pixelated, but that's also because I'm drawing it super, super small. You'll see a lot of people that will go through and just do like hatch lines following the curve to create that movement and that momentum. And that's going to create that natural shadow for all of these shapes and flows. And that's one of the ways that they go through. If they really need it to be darker, they'll cross hatch it. And then that will create that value so that when you look at it, you can tell that there's certain spots that are receding and certain spots that are coming forward. And as long as you have this negative line where you don't shade anything in, running along the back of the ornament, you'll be just fine and everything will really look nice. There are going to be times when you really want to make sure that you leave certain other areas open, which I forgot to do earlier, so that it all looks like these parts that are curling up are coming from the spine of this scroll work design. You could even leave one here, and then this would get just a little bit of shadow on the inside. So that this way everything looks like it's originating from this space that we've left right along the outside border of our scrolling design. It makes drawing this stuff super tedious, super time consuming, and a huge pain in the butt. But when it's done, it looks fantastic and it really takes on the life that it should have. So I hope that helps some of you out there at least a little bit. I'm going to continue kind of refining this. Oh, you're very welcome, Creature. Creature, I don't remember whether or not I gave you my cell phone number in Hell City this past year, but if I didn't, hit me up, send me a message on Instagram, and I'll just give you my cell phone number. Feel free to ask any questions you might have at any time. You've been a great regular participant on this show for a long time. If there's ever anything I can help with, by all means, please send me a text, hit me up, let me know. I'll be happy to help you in any way I can. I love drawing these scroll designs because to me, this is like the perfect type of ornamental concept that you can use as accents. You can keep it a lot more simple and use it as just like ornamental filigree designs. I've done that a few times as well, where you basically take something, um, instead of doing like a really intricate, tight scrolling design, maybe you just keep it nice and big and simplistic, and you bring it in and just kind of taper it out as it goes. And then that can be a really nice, almost solid black, or you can go around it and just do the negative. That works too. But it can give you a really nice way to kind of just go through and create some accent designs. I actually have a specific brush set up just for that. Yeah, here we go. So they don't always even have to connect. Sometimes you can just do like, little accents, start out big. As you taper your pressure off, it gets to be a lot smaller, and it can give you a really nice kind of accent if you're doing something super ornamental. Yeah, I got the first part of this right. It was nice and curly. This part, I want to start out and just bring that around. If I'm just sticking with something ornamental, I can just bring some of these guys up and around, and it's going to look great. Maybe I'll go through and I'll erase, a little bit here, and then I'll erase a little bit here to kind of give it almost like a dimensional look. If I wanted to stick with something just kind of basic and ornamental. Now it's going to look like, there's obviously movement. One's traveling in front of the other and then going behind another spot. So it can kind of help you add a little bit more dimension to some things. You want to make sure that your spaces don't get too closed down like this part is. You always want to have a nice, smooth, flowing, natural curve. The only reason why I don't encourage people to start out super solid like this is because then you lose a lot of that really nice depth and dimension that you would otherwise have if you left that like line or spine on your acanthus leaf design. Um, you lose a lot of that kind of texture and detail that can really be nice. But it is nice to be able to go through and kind of block it in at first and kind of refine your shapes. Not that I would recommend doing something that big, but there we go. Now, I'm also not trying to give myself a migraine when doing these scrolling designs, so I'm trying to be selective about how much detail I'm putting into it. Um, I could literally spend hours every day just drawing scroll designs because I love them so much. Especially if you shade them in the right way, they look incredible. And that you can get them to move in all types of different ways. Certain areas can be a little bit more tricky to kind of figure out. Um, for example, I've got, yeah, oh, here's a good example. Here's a good example. Here we go. So I've got this part here, which connects over here, right, to this part, but I can't leave this area here open, okay, because that's just going to look awkward, right? So what do I put there, right? Well, here's the secret to these areas. I always start out with one line right in the dead center. That way I know the furthest point out it's going to stick. And then I'll draw like maybe one or two, depending on how big the area is. You can draw two, three, four, maybe even five smaller kind of vein lines branching out. And then it's as easy as going through, and sometimes I'll start with like a little circle in between just to kind of show where things meet up. Um, and then you can very easily, create little almost like leaf-like shapes following that the curve of that circle. So this would be where some of those acanthus leaves kind of expand and then kind of fold over on each other. And you can get some really and obviously I'm doing this kind of quickly, but you can get some really nice shapes out of this. And shading these parts in gets to be a little bit more tricky than the rest of it, just because you're going to have a lot of different areas that need to be left open. Um, for example, you want to make sure that you have like a nice folding kind of line where these overlap and intersect. So you're going to want to make sure that you have one part that stays open, like right by the fold. Then these lines technically shouldn't connect at all. This is like, I could do like an entire seminar on just drawing filigree. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll do that at one of the conventions this coming year. I think it's something that everyone should know how to draw correctly, and there's a lot of people out there that do not know how to draw it correctly. Granted, yes, there is no right or wrong way to draw anything if you want to get into the philosophical aspect behind things, but there are certain base principles that I feel need to be followed. Just personal opinion. You also want to make sure that the center lines that I drew in there before can very easily be erased because those should be left open and negative. The rest of it you can just kind of like shade in a little bit. Certain areas are going to end up being a little darker, certain areas are going to be a little lighter. But by keeping some of these negative or unshaded areas in there, that's going to create that look of multiple spines, as I was discussing before about keeping this spinal ridge nice and open. This, am I drawing on a toned down area? Yes, I am, of course. So this spinal ridge that I was talking about before, how if you ever draw this stuff, it's going to look a lot better if all of these areas are left unshaded and just left open. And that's because these are all representing connections to that central spine of the leaf, right? So just like those, these areas here should be left unshaded because those are also connecting to the central spine of the leaf. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. So if I'm going to leave those open-ended, I can come back in here with this guy. And this is where things can get a little tricky because you want to make sure that you have these folds. Those are also left open. So you're going to have a lot of unshaded area on stuff like this. Sometimes people get really crazy with the way that these things fold over. You'll have different parts that would be a good example. Let's do... We'll draw this one a little bit differently. So you could have this coming down. You could have this coming over. If I remember how to do this correctly. Then you would have a little fold on the leaf where this part would be folding up. Now that would get real interesting. So you can get really creative with it. Try to keep, if you're going to do a fold, and I'll kind of go through and do a black line drawing for this in a minute. If you're going to do a fold over though, because you could very easily go through, bring this all the way over. If you're going to do a fold over, make sure that all of the parts of the leaf are folding in the same direction. I see a lot of people doing that, and they'll have different parts folding in opposite directions, and it's like, well, that doesn't really make sense because gravity is going to force it to fold in one direction, or wind or perspective or whatever. It's all going to force it to fold in a specific direction. You don't have to do that with every leaf, but it's nice to know that way it doesn't look super wrong. And if I were to outline this, coming around, this is where that fold would take place. So I'd probably just do a little bit of a straight bump. Then you would come in here, you would come down, and then I always like to do something like this, where you just have like a little S curve, and then you can bring this down like that. Then this would get its own little pathway. This would get its own little pathway for the negative areas that shouldn't be shaded. You can do that with a lot of these areas. Maybe you leave a little bit of an open pathway here and here. Same thing here. Maybe you leave a little bit of an open pathway. So you can really, really get into some of the intricacies of how these shapes fold over. There was actually a point in time when I wanted to get into, this is what I was talking about, by the way, having them both fold over in kind of opposing directions. It can create a kind of cool look sometimes, but when you're talking about physics, it just makes more sense to either have the left side or the right side fold over. But if you're going to do the right side here, it needs to be done consistently. Sometimes you can have inconsistencies like this guy, but it doesn't always look the best. So just be aware. Um, I forget what else I was saying. So that would be there. Oh, I was saying there was actually a point in time when I actually went out and bought all of the stuff I needed to do to get into hand engraving, just because I really enjoy doing this kind of stuff that much. Um, but then I realized I also needed to drop a couple $100 on like a microscope so that I could really see what I was doing when I was engraving things. And then I had to get a really good expensive engraver and then a lap wheel, like a diamond grit lap wheel or whatever to sharpen the actual garvers. And I was like, all right, how much money am I putting into this for a hobby? I'm not trying to spend, $10,000 just trying to get into something for a hobby, especially when I don't even know if I'm going to enjoy doing it. So I just got like a real basic setup and started playing around with it. And it is a lot of fun. It's actually very much akin to tattooing, believe it or not. Um, it's very much foot pedal and hand controlled, just like tattooing. So it makes sense that there's a reason why there are some people that get into that also have a background in the tattoo industry. Um, because it's very much like tattooing. I would leave this center area open to create that like look, that spinal look. Now I would, if I was shading this in from the center crease and joint here, right? I would take some of this area and I would sweep that out into the rest of it to create that look like it's coming from behind or it's coming from in between these other areas. Um, this way, as I'm going through and I'm drawing the rest of it, the lights can stay really, really light, but then you can obviously tell that this part is kind of coming out from in between these two other pieces. So it's just a little bit of food for thought for today. I don't know if I'm going to go with the ornamental style design. I'm actually going to toss the concepts over to the person getting it done later today just to see what they think. But I did want to play around with this and kind of talk to you and show you guys a little bit about what could possibly be done. Um, I think I'm actually going to go through. I always like to create groups, so that would be all the scroll designs. This would be some of the bat and webbing designs. This would be the bat. Um, the other concept I had that I'm going to play around with and just do a quick mock-up on was doing like a nice size spider right in the middle of it. Um, Maybe doing something like almost like an orb weaver, kind of like in the middle of the back, maybe crawling down. Um, Once again, if I was doing this for like a final design, I would actually take my time and make sure each of the legs are specifically articulated and they were not symmetrical. They would be asymmetrical because as a spider moves, it's moving each individual leg. So that means each individual leg would technically be at a different position. Um, but for today's intents and purposes, it's basically just mocking out a concept, so I'm not really super concerned about it. Also, don't hate me if I'm getting the anatomy wrong. I think spiders actually have much smaller heads, and they've got a cephalothorax. I think that's the correct anatomical terminology because you have the thorax, cephalothorax, and then head. Um, Whereas other animals only have a thorax and a head, one big body part, and then their head is attached to that. I believe spiders' legs are actually connected to the cephalothorax. So I may actually end up having to redraw part of the body anyway. But that's okay. Um, so this would be another concept, and then if I was going through and I really wanted to do something kind of coming down a bit lower, I'd probably make the spider a little bit smaller, just because I know they said they weren't trying to take up too much room, but enough that it could be discernible and we could get some of those real nice details in there. So I'd make this a little bit bigger. And then maybe I would just have like a couple of strands coming out to the side of the web. Maybe a little bit coming up. Maybe we'll have like, one little piece over here. Then this we could have, and split this off into a couple. I don't know. It's just drawing and playing around with it. It's different ways to draw things. I like to doodle a lot and conceptualize things. Now, my client's pretty cool. They haven't really given me any kind of they haven't given me any kind of restrictions. I already know what they like. I've been tattooing them for a very long time. So I know that they like dark, creepy, gothic-y, kind of scary stuff. But they still want it to be kind of like classy and elegant, and that's cool. I'm all about that. Um, so I'm just trying to like conceptualize and brainstorm some things I think they might like, but I'm also trying to leave it open-ended so that if they decide to expand on it later on and do a full back piece, we still have that kind of a possibility. So, but I'll probably be playing around with this a bit more today. Hope you guys picked up something today. Hope you guys learned something kind of cool or maybe something you didn't know before. Um, if you didn't, I'm sorry and I will do better, but you can always send me a message and I'll try to fix it the next time. Maybe I'll cover something different next time. Who knows? I don't. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed today. Keep those hands moving. Keep yourselves busy. Stay out of trouble. Enjoy the holidays. Enjoy the New Year's in a safe and responsible manner. I always try to recommend that. I've seen too many bad things happen on New Year's. So thank you very much. Happy New Year to you all. And I will see you next year. Thank you very much. My name is Jason Leeser, and thank you for watching today, and I will see you next week.